Chat, I muted my microphone again. Oopsies. What's up, everybody? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical today. And what a wild weekend it's been. We had a bunch of singles event coverage to talk about, obviously. Did that on the Monday video. This weekend was an insane weekend for Team 40k. We had obviously the ATC over here in North America, but we also had a 255 player event over in Russia, which is wild. Where did that come from? 255 player teams tournament going on in Russia. There's also a couple other events, a couple other team events that went down as well. And we're sort of staring down the barrel of the WTC here. WTC list went down this past week. Now, the WTC is in a little bit of a weird spot because they're actually they rules locked the day before the Wednesday update that we got last week. So they're actually operating on an outdated rules format, which is a little bit strange. Some of the rules, like rulings, got incorporated, but most of them have been left off. So for the most part, it hasn't changed a huge amount, but there is like a predominance of like space wolves, for example, that actually are using now illegal rules. So it's a little bit of it's an interesting situation. Yeah. So that's pretty wild. So I don't know if I'm that interested in talking about WTC lists. I'll leave that to the players who are, I think, or the content creators who are a little bit more invested in WTC stuff. If we want to, like maybe next week or something, we can go over some weird ones, but for the most part, it's going to be like kind of a weird format for this year. So I don't know. It's going to be kind of bizarre. Yeah, unnerfed Warp Meld Pact. Although I don't know if they've had any. I believe that they've done house rulings on how Warp Meld Pact interacts with target selection. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It won't matter for literally anyone else in the world. It's only WTC players. But it is what it is. And old Bloodletter rules. Yeah, people are actually playing Corn Demonkin for sure.
Ryan G donated $5 through Super Chat. Before we dive headfirst into teams, could we take a look at the winning Ork list from the Bazooka Games RTT? BTW 9th place had a fun third R&D matchup.
I don't know what that is, chat. If you have a link, then we can look. But I don't have that on my roster. Lots of unchanged stuff too. Yeah, we'll see. That's not. I don't have that on the docket for today. But if we want to do that at some point in the future and talk about the is it like an RTT? So I have my BCP set to only show. Go to my screen here. To only show.
Ramdio donated $4.99 through Super Chat. Thanks for having me for the first round at ATC.
Hey,
shout out to my opponent for being a great opponent.
Randy, thanks for hopping on. You had so many fans in chat, by the way. It was crazy. It was everybody popped out to say go Randy. So that was really cool to see. Thanks for playing on stream, man. I appreciate that. That's super fun. Bazooka Games. Yeah, I got nothing, chat. Oh, maybe it's in the more section here. So normally I don't. I don't know. Normally I have my BCP set to only display 5 round events or onwards, so I don't look at like some small RTC stuff as much. I'm getting nothing on this week's thing, so I'm not sure what event we are referring to, chats. So anyway, okay, you send me a link. Okay, I don't have it. Yep. I don't know. I got nothing. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about today was a little bit of a peek into kind of the metagame, especially for 8-player team events right now, because I think we're in a really interesting position for Team 40k because the game's really unbalanced right now. I kind of wanted to do like maybe I don't know if this is like worth a whole video, maybe just like a little patron thing or whatever, but I think we're in this really interesting position where I think chapter for 2025 is fucking awesome. There's probably a little bit of fine tuning we could do to challenger cards. Like maybe they should go to like 7 or 8 points instead of 6. 6 feels really easy to unlock a challenger card off of one turn of bad secondary draws, which means that like sometimes your opponent's just like, oh, I drew 2 secondaries that autocomplete. I guess I'll go fuck myself because it's basically half as effective as it was previously. If your opponent's just like, I drew balls and got a challenger, which is it's a little bit funny. And then when the challengers like give you a really powerful effect on table, it gets really annoying. But though that I've only really seen that comes into play on like really like high tier games, like top table games, where the challenger cards actually do sort of like entirely reverse the
Ryan G donated $2 through Super Chat. BTW, my condolences to your back after that drive.
To my back? My back's okay. We're pretty good. But I appreciate that. It was a long drive. I basically got home and just immediately passed out after the drive last night. I got home about 1 a.m. I think, and just like basically immediately I made dinner and just like curling in bed and just fucking zonked. But I had a lot going on today, so we're back on the wagon, and it sounds like I'm still talking with a couple of events this weekend. It sounds like I might be back up to my old stomping grounds this weekend for a GT for live streaming. So I'm gonna be back out on Friday to go live stream that. Assuming that gets locked in. And then next week, we have the Heart of War GT. The week after, we have Tennessee Elite Open, so I'll be back in Tennessee for that one. And then the weekend after that is going to be... excuse me. Jesus Christ. Phone is going insane. My phone just notified me that I'm live. Great. Thanks, phone. That's what I needed you to do. I usually have it off, but I turned it on today. What a mistake. And then I lost my train of thought what I was talking about. But then we're over to back to Texas for Lone Star Open. So it's like an insane amount of driving in the next month or so. I'm basically booked solid on GT coverage until end of August almost, which is wild. But yeah, when I got back, I actually had an interview with the head judge from ATC because there was, if you've heard about it, I know a couple of people messaged me about it. If you have heard about it, there was a little bit of drama at ATC, some spicy, juicy drama that I have a personal connection with, in fact, which I didn't know about at the time until after the fact. There will be a video about that later this week. I'm not going to talk about it on stream right now, but if you're on my Patreon, I do have a long interview with the head judge from that event talking about exactly what happens, because obviously he was front and center for the whole thing. And I do sort of go into a little bit of my angle of it because I had a little bit of a unique perspective, which was interesting. So go check that out. It's at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise. That interview is live, the raw uncut version, and then I'll be making like an actual video about it, probably for release either tomorrow or on Thursday. So a little bit of spice going on over there. But otherwise, it was cheaty dice. There was indeed some cheaty dice happening for sure. But yeah. Anyway, I think we're sure the point at hand is that we're in an interesting spot, which is that I think that chapter for 2025 is fucking awesome. I think it's super cool and it's super good for the game. I think challenger cards are great. All the naysayers who don't think challenger cards are cool, get wrecked. I think that they're interesting and cool, and they do in fact and help enforce a more fair outcome to games. I've actually a couple of games last week that I played were decided on the back of challenger cards, and I think that they literally took games where the one player would have won by a little bit by just like going first and getting a lot of points early, and they actually did just enough sort of reorientation to switch that result to where it was probably more deserved. And I was on both the winning and losing side of that, and it felt really good to me. Without challenger cards, I would have felt that I had robbed my opponent of a win, and I felt that I also played really well into a tough opponent, and challenger cards were able to sort of like edge me over and get me the win. And I think that's really cool. I think they've been super fun and interesting. Obviously, like I said, probably a little bit of fine tuning that could be done, and we could see that done in a tournament companion update. But the faction balance, not so good right now. Death Guard, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, fucking destroying everyone. And that's interesting because it has a very transformative effect on team formats, which I'm interested on about discussing. Certainly when one of your games is just based on the way to the finals, just to making sure you pitch cards for CP and getting instead of going up to 6 or higher. Yeah, so that's like part of the part that I don't like so much, where you're like disincentivized from scoring like 1 or 2 extra. And I do feel like you could push the differential to like 8, and that wouldn't really happen anymore, because 6 is such a weird decision point, because literally if you go to 7 or 8, then it cuts so many combinations of secondary draws out of the like the limit where scoring them gives your opponent a challenger card. And 6 is really easy to get like kind of a humdrum turn on secondaries, but then your opponent gets 3 points. So you're like, why would I even score these? But I that's the one thing I have with them. And the other weird part is that when full round secondaries aren't checked in the time the challengers score, then that gets really weird. If you have an ongoing secondary card in your hand that's about to score at the end of the top of the turn, right? So like if first player is going, you're second player, and you're holding like a defense stronghold, the defense stronghold hasn't counted for challenger cards yet. So there's an instance where you could score that, and then draw a challenger card, and you basically get 6 points. I don't like that either, but I have no idea how to change that. And it's like not super common, so I don't know how much of it's like worth like getting into that. But that's like a weird one, just because you'd have to basically change how it like tracks active cards or whatever. But otherwise, in like every other situation, I think they're super awesome. Anyway, chat. It's fine. World's literally on fire. Yeah. It's fine as we get suffocated by Death Guard armies. All right. Ryan G wants us to look at the Bazooka Games RTT, where Sean Olsen won with Orks. Okay. And apparently PCP's logged me out. God damn it, PCP. All right, now I have to do this all again. Fucking. Why does it do this? It's so annoying. All right, here we go. Shot also one with the Orks. With a Dread Mob. What the fuck? All right. Triple mechs. Double 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 60 Gretchen. Gorkanaut, double Morkanaut Stompa. What an insane meme. So we have like mechs with a +1 to hit, which works on all their attacks, by the way. It works on ranged and melee attacks, which is sick. And then Dread Mob can give them their sustained or lethal based on what you get when you push the button. And then you can also get like bigger guns for bigger gets, which is actually like maybe an interesting solution to like super heavies. Because you have really easy access to, or bigger shells for bigger gets, excuse me. You have really easy access to like +1 strength and damage on a lot of this stuff, which makes the Stompa go sort of insane. So like +1 to hit, +1 strength, +1 damage, and then like sustained hits is essentially another +1 to hit, right? If you get that on that guy, and the Stompa's like profile is actually kind of nuts. So if I can actually pull up the Stompa datasheet real quick. Can I find it in a reasonable time frame? The problem with the Stompa, and I played a Stompa for a challenge list at one point, which I won, by the way, which was insane. Mordaka was certainly a fair and balanced detachment with no problems whatsoever. The Stompa was actually felt. Oh, those are killer cans. That's a little baby Stompa. I don't think I have the Stompa picked out explicitly. Oh no, I don't know if I have it here, chats. Nope, I have no idea where it is. Let me just go grab it off of Wikipedia. But when that thing's sustained hits too, it goes super hard, which is pretty wild. And then this can kind of like ape sort of a similar effect if you're putting everything together. But the problem that I found with it was that it was actually super big. So the issue is that the model is so physically enormous because it's basically like a knight plus. It's it's not a knight, but it is like probably 40% larger than a knight. So it's so like insanely wide that it's very difficult to like survive if you just get like laser cannon top of one. But if you play like reasonable, if you play like heavy terrain, it's probably okay. It also doesn't have the super heavy walker, as far as I know, so it can't go through vertical terrain features, which is awkward. It has to like do weird rotates to go around them and stuff, which is a little bit weird. But the big thing is like the combination of the def cannon and the rockets, the super rockets. So you're shooting 4d6 AP3 d6 plus damage weapons, right? So these things are hitting on 4s, plus 1 to wound, so they're winning enemies on 2s, potentially sustained hits, plus 1 damage, right? So it's all d6 plus 1 damage, and you're shooting on average like 10 of those. So it's like you average like 7 hits, 6 wounds. So you're putting like 6 AP3 d6 plus 1, between d6 plus 1 and d6 plus 3 shots through onto invuln saves. If they're rotated, they're maybe okay. They'll probably only take like 13 damage plus all the little guns. If they're not rotated, things go really badly for them. So that's a pretty spicy. That's pretty spicy right there. Then the knots, I don't know quite as so much about. I've never seen one on the battlefield and been actually impressed by what it does. Which is always feels bad because they're like a little bit more like knight sized. The problem is their weapons are like all over the place. So like Morkanaut is shooting, I guess, d6 plus 6 d6 damage shots. So it's about half as much as the Stompa, but it's like way more points efficient. Although its strength is way lower. So into T11 it actually kind of sucks super hard. And it's just double Morkanaut, or it's Gorkanaut double Morkanaut. Okay. I mean, this profile is good into like armatures chassis, I guess, but it's only AP2. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So for a profile that's going to get preyed on by the metagame for the most part, you're kind of coming in at like a really inconsistent damage output, which is kind of feels really weird to me. But at least like they can kind of like fade a lot of the incoming damage from the Stompa, because you can just like push these idiots forward and force your opponent to trade with them, and then the Stompa gets to kill whatever killed them. The Stompa also has absolutely ludicrous melee damage, by the way. Like it's it's insane. It gets +1 to hit from the mech. So it's hitting on 2s. It's 6 attack strength, 24 AP5, 10 damage. You will not survive. It will kill you. Which is wild. Absolutely wild. And give it a salt. Yeah, the problem with the Stompa isn't like necessarily its maneuvering. It's more so that it cannot hide, right? So if you're into like, I don't know, something that could kill it reasonably. It is toughness 14, which is actually kind of annoying. But like into a bunch of laser destroyers or something, and you go second, like you just die. It's not that hard to kill. Like T14 with a 2+ save is pretty good, but you start to absorb like the big like D6 plus 6 like laser cannon shots, and it gets really bad for you unless you roll 6s to save them. And then those wounds start disappearing very quickly, because like oftentimes your opponent can just put their whole army into you. So sometimes you're just like, I deploy on the line and hope I go first. Let's go. But it depends on the terrain entirely. Can you do a Gretchen reactive move back into a Stompa? Yeah, I don't see why not. Conniving runts. Yeah, it's just you just make a normal move. So at the end of any normal move, you can embark into a vehicle if everyone's within 3 inches of it. So unless they did the maybe they did the base FAQ where the unit just has to be within 3 inches in order to embark on the Morkanauts because they have bases. that like clearly typoed rules commentary section. That would be pretty good. Didn't catch the point cost. It's 800 points. It's like almost a half of your army. It's so much points. Oh my god. But it's like such a concentrator of buffs. If you can put buffs on it, and it goes so nuts. Assuming you don't just get laser beamed right off the table. Assuming you don't get like Oath of Momented and just like 3 Predator Annihilators, just like input 25 damage directly into your soul. It gets pretty brutal. Anyway, chat. I think with that we will move on. Talk about some team stuff. So I'm curious. So there's an interesting kind of like through line that I've been sort of identifying. There are two types of people in the Warhammer 40,000 team universe. There are the people that put all of their emphasis on knight and knight equivalents. And I'll give you an example here because we streamed them over the weekend. This list sends me every time. So Team Degen from ATC 8 player, which I think went 3-2, but we streamed them twice and they had a pretty good run. They ran essentially 3 knight lists. They ran Riley Corbett on Imperial Knights. It's like kind of standard Imperial Knight stuff. Sister Battle Emulator, a bunch of dudes, 3 big knights. Plus David Klopstad, who we actually watched on stream twice, or watched on stream once, I believe. On Chaos Knights, with Lords of Dread with a bunch of dudes. Actually cut one dude for all of the enhancements, which is sick. This actually was like super, super good. The enhancements in this attachment are nuts. Obviously, like 10-point up down is crazy. Blade of Celerity is fights first on a Knight Rampager. So usually what happens is that this army trades piece for piece in terms of like the ranged profiles. So the Warpborn Stalker like up downs, gets within 12 of you, shoots you in melter range, so you just fucking die. And then the Knight Rampager sort of blows past and kills something. Your opponent is going to be like, all right, we're only in melee range of the Rampager, so we're going to leave that for our melee contingent and then shoot at the other big knight. So they're shooting at this stuff. If they do that though, the Knight Despoiler the Knight Rampager just calls Blade of Celerity, fights first and kills their whole melee unit. So you have to focus your shooting on the Rampager, which lets like the Despoiler and the Desecrator just do everything again. Just shoot you another time, and your melee units just die instead. So it's like so obnoxious. That enhancement's insane. And then you also get points for two War Dog Executioners rather than taking 6 bigs, which is the other option, which a lot of teams did. So those are 2 knight lists. But if we look at this list as well, we're basically tripling down. Do we want to? What's better than 2 super heavy Titanic builds? Is Shadow Legion with 3 great unclean ones. So basically, a 3rd super heavy Titanic list. They're not technically Titanic, but they're about the same size, and they're about the same survivability, if not more survivable than a knight. They hit relatively, like, they hit okay in melee. They're not quite as what's the word? They're not quite as like high damage, but they have more attacks in melee, so it's like sort of a wash. Plus, they can do like weird toughness stuff to you to make their attack strength stronger. They have access to Lance in the detachment. They have access to -1 wound permanently if your strength is higher than their toughness. So their toughness 13, so 2 higher strength than equivalent knight chassis, which actually blanks a lot of like weird random damage, like random stuff that you're teching for them. Because if you're teching T12 attacks, or strength 12 attacks, or strength 6 to go into toughness 11 so that you wound on 3s or 5s, both of those get blanked by great unclean ones because you win them on 6s. So it's this like weird, like counter archetype that just does the same thing. And then you have a Bloodthirster, Fates of Darkness Bloodthirster, so he can keep picking you off over the course of the game, plus Bellicor. It doesn't quite like attrition quite as well because the Great Unclean ones have less total wounds. And they eat like random little attacks worse. Like if you just have like a bunch of lethal hits against the Knight list, it's not going to do too much. Unless you start getting like ignore cover plus AP values. But the Great Unclean ones just absorb that damage because their saving throws aren't as good. So it's like definitely not entirely like impervious to all those attacks. But it's funny because it's essentially doing exactly the same thing that Knights want to do, except that it's doing it in an opposite direction, essentially. You also get 6 Nurglings in the middle of the table too, which is just pretty wild. So yeah, good stuff. So that's funny. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to just take answers, basically. So if we look at like Summer Waha Fest, so this is the Russian event. We only ran 1 Imperial Knights. And I think this could be player sort of skill or whatever, or pairing skill even. But it seems to me that the more effective teams are basically instead of succumbing to the siren call of just skewing your whole team out so that other teams just die when they hit you, they just build a normal composition and include some extra solutions for super heavies. And so that's kind of what we saw in both Team Art of War actually took this one down with no Chaos Knights, only Imperial Knights, and basically focusing the rest of the army on things, on a bunch of idiots, right? So we had like Sasha Alexander Edelkraut played Creations of Bile with like 1 trillion possessed, just a bunch of idiots. Gene Stealer Cults, Tucker Ricky playing Gene Stealer Cults, just played a bunch of guys. A bunch of Neophyte hybrids. We even had Bryce Bennett playing Astra Militarum, who was playing like I don't want to say it was like entirely infantry focused. It was mostly combined arms stuff, but it was a lot of individual infantry squads. So it was double Catachan Dungle Fighters, Cadian Shock Troops, double Kazarkin. So it was a lot of like a really aggressive infantry that could like swap into duty and honor and steal your objectives away, right? So it's not focused on these big heavy tank lists, which you could do. You could almost do a third version where all you play is like Hammer of the Emperor Imperial Guard. We actually saw that happen in the finals. And you'd play 1,000,000 Rogaldorns. So you could just build your entire team out to answer specific problems. But what they did for this team, and the reason I think that they won, is that they took the 1 skew and they said, that's fine. We have Imperial Knights. They're super torqued right now, right? We could play Chaos Knights, which are almost equally torqued. But we're just going to take Imperial Knights because they are more consistent, right? Imperial Knights have more rerolls, feel no pains, normal stuff. So they took Ben Urich with Imperial Knights. Then they included Michael Mann with Thousand Suns, who has an even, if not advantaged matchup into most super heavy builds, right? Because you can dump Mortal Wounds and you can dump Kabbalistic Rituals onto a single target. He was playing Grand Coven. So it's all damage all the time, all big good damage. He had an interesting thing here where he took a regular Demon Prince to give stealth and an aura, which is good into Knight builds because they actually have very little in the way of like fixing for stealth, for example. Once you give the entire army -1 to hit, the rerolls only go so far from Layla the Tyrants. So that's pretty interesting. He also basically lets you play more aggro with Magnus because as you lose casters, he becomes better at casting spells. So you still get consistent rituals until through the end of the game. Even if Magnus like goes and kills a bunch of stuff and then dies, you don't lose your +2 rituals because the Demon Prince is probably powered up and is able to do that himself, or vice versa, which is kind of cool. I like that. I like a play that is takes a lot of the focus off of Magnus. But you're able to put like crazy single target damage down because we can dump +2 to cast rituals from Magnus onto a single target, give rerolls, give AP bonuses. Then, just lay into it. Magnus full rerolls, hit, wound. We have like Eldritch Vortex of Etaf on a sorcerer. You get that guy hit rerolls, and suddenly he starts sustain hitting 3 on a 2 damage gun. That gets crazy. And so this list can punch through knights. It's also fairly well oriented into other directions as well. Also, old Harpster over here. What the fuck is this? Eldari Warhost. Running 20 fire dragons. Well, we want to blow up a vehicle. We found a way. Take 20 fire dragons. Also, fairly good into other matchups as well.
Bucket of Steel Cable donated $6 and
Thank you, Bucket of Steel
99 cents
Cable.
through Super Chat. Hey Tac, could you give her a brief explanation how team events work?
I absolutely can do that. And also, I'm really glad you showed up because I needed to hang some lights. So a bucket of steel cable is exactly what the doctor ordered. Yeah, let's grab a diagram here. I think what we'll do is take a peek at the WTC pairing guide. Because most team events use essentially just this system. Here we go. So, here's an example of a WTC pairing. So there's a whole set of diagrams over here that explain how each individual process goes, but I'll give you a brief thing. And honestly, I think I'm going to make this into a video at some point because now that we're covering more team stuff on the channel for live streaming, and also just the fact that team events are more popular now than they've ever been, I think it's definitely worth like having that as evergreen content. So I'll probably ahead of Tennessee Elite Open, I'll probably have a pairing video up at some point. But here is in general how it works. So the goal, it's 8 versus 8 is the standard format. Sometimes you get 5 versus 5, which gets a little bit hokier. 5 versus 5 feels more like 5 individual matchups rather than like teams fighting. You usually just like kind of finagle the pairing process and then you just play a normal game. 8 versus 8 is puts much more emphasis on this pairing system because you have another pairing step to go through. So the system is the system is dictates how these players play each other. You have 8 individual players versus 8 individual players. How are they going to get paired together? The way it works is that during each step, and there's going to go through 3 of these steps. Each player they pick one of their players and they put them down as a defender. Now, the players have an army list that they've already pre-submitted. I got this question over the weekend a couple times. The army lists and the factions are all pre-submitted. So both teams know what armies the other team has and what army each player is playing. The problem is that if I say that they put down an army, then people think that they put like a faction down and then get to build a list around it, but they don't do that. So they put down the player. They put down the player as a defender. Then the other team looks at that player and they put down 2 attackers to answer them. Of those 2, the defending team selects one of the 2 to play against. So the defender gets control over who they play. However, the attacking team gets to dictate what their choice is. So you can give the defender 2 matchups that you think are really bad for them, and the defender can pick the one that they think is the least bad. The other option is that you can try to present defenders that will potentially coax out armies from the opposing team that other members of your team do not want to play against, and so you can remove them from the pairing process. One piece of strategy, and one thing that the team format does is that it only checks. If we look at the placings here, it checks, or I guess pairings, a differential score. So it does this score out of 20 for each table, not out of 100 like you would normally do. And you get a differential score based on how hard you beat your opponent. So the goal is to beat your opponent really hard and get these 20-0 wins, right? However, many lists, like for example, we have Stephen Mitchell versus Bryce Bennett here. That's a very, very close game. Many lists are designed to be early defenders in that they're good at scoring, even if they lose. because the loss only matters for tiebreakers. What matters is how many points you get out of the loss. So an 11-9 win is still a loss, but it doesn't matter quite as much as a 20-0 victory, right? So these defending teams will often be armies that can play into almost anything and still score a high passive points value, even if they lose the game. They don't really matter. So what we'll see is if we go to some of our lists here, here we go. What we'll see is we have factions like Grey Knights that you're like, competitively, Grey Knights are kind of whatever, right? They haven't really won anything. But what they're really good at doing, what they're so good at doing, is just scoring infinite numbers of points. Grey Knights will score essentially, they'll score for days, right? They're just going to up, down. They're going to teleport around. If you're playing, I don't know what this list was playing, but even if you're playing Warpaint Task Force, yeah, we were playing Warpaint Task Force, so we do a little bit of damage. But worst case scenario, we have 2 strikes, so we have OBSEC scouting units. And then we have Purifier squads that can deliver things 6 inches away from enemies. So almost anywhere on the battlefield, right? You could, with just the use of like a Purifier squad and a Strike squad, you could put 10 OC on an objective, even if your opponent's on it. Or you could get like into their deployment zone in order to get secondary scores. You can get anywhere, right? And you can constantly be scoring. And then because you're Warpaint Task Force, your damage output's not bad either. So you have a little bit of fight in you, but worst case scenario, you can just literally jump around the table and score 1 million points. So even if they lose, they're going to score a bunch of points, and they're not going to lose by that much. So that's a consideration when they're placing a defender team. So they'll go through that whole pairing, that whole process. And that will determine, if we look at the corner down here, that will determine the first set of pairings. So each team put down a defender, the other team put down 2 attackers. The defending team took one of those attackers, that becomes the pairing, and the other attacker goes back into the pool. There is then usually for these team events, each table is different, and there's a process to select the tables. The defending player usually gets to select what terrain you're playing on, so they also get a little bit more control over that, which means another avenue to selecting your defending player is building an army that's good on a very specific terrain layout, and then being defender every time, so you can always play on that terrain layout. That happens quite a bit too. So from there, we're going to basically repeat that process 3 times. So we're going to go through the first set. We're going to go through the second set. Each one of those is going to set 2 tables worth of pairings. Once you go to the third one, at this point, right, once we get to the final 4 pairings, pairing 5 through 8, there are going to be 8 players remaining. Once attackers and defenders are selected, so each team has presented 1 defender. Each team has presented 2 attackers. That's 6 teams. So there's 6 players, excuse me. So there's 2 players left over. Those automatically get paired. So the decision of defender and attackers is very important because it will determine what your 8th pairing is. From there, you do the normal selection thing where you select, each defender selects an attacker to play against. However, the 2 remaining attackers automatically become pairing 7. So that last pairing step, right, the selection of pairing 5 and 6 also determines what the leftover pairs are, which play in tables 7 and 8. So that one has like some extra emphasis on it, some extra stuff that it could do. So that's an important selection there. And sometimes you can do some weird stuff where you can pick a defender, or the defender can pick an attacker that's maybe not as good for them in order to make it so that attacker has to play the more likely of your attackers that your opponent selects, which then can potentially give you a good matchup in pairing 7. And you can also do stuff where, like, if you're pretty confident what they're going to put down as attackers, right, you can select your own attackers such that you can try to make pairing 8 beneficial for you as well. So that there's like this selection is where like a lot of the thinking happens, because that's where the really interesting kind of like mental arithmetic goes down. But once you're done with that, you have all 8 pairings, and that's how it goes. So this process where you select a defender and then 2 attackers, that's like 90% of it. And then the other, I don't know, 10 to 20% is this last bit of the leftover teams that automatically get, or leftover players that automatically get paired against each other. But basically, all team events will use that. That's what the WTC does. They really pioneered this pairing format, and it is very complicated, but it's really cool actually. The way that it shapes team selection, and even the way that the points differential system changes how you play games and how you sort of view matchups is really interesting as well, because it's no longer just binary win-loss, which feeds into feeds into your team composition, right? Because you want to be including these armies that can lose but still win by getting yourself a couple of additional pairings points, right? Or differential points. So it's all kind of a finely tuned machine. The awkward part is when people take all of these mechanics and then they use them in singles events, because that happens all the time. Not where they were designed, but in teams events, it's very, very cool. And that's basically the system that almost every team event in the world uses. But that is a really long way of explaining how the team pairing process works. I hope that makes sense. I hope that was worth the investment of the super chat. A brief explanation. Yeah, sorry, chat. That was like 15 minutes. Oh boy. But anyway, that's what that was. So yeah. Going back to the original point. So as I was mentioning before, there are essentially two types of teams that they're playing right now. The teams that are trying to skew really hard, and the teams that are trying to beat the skew. We have teams like this, like Art of Wars, that's trying to beat the skew. On the flip side, or on the same side, I believe, so G6 here won Summer Waha Fest 2025, 4-0-1 result. There is a break point that you have to meet in order to actually get a win, even if you have beaten your opponent. In this case, they had lower. I think they exactly drew this round, which is pretty wild. They got literally exactly as many points to draw. Otherwise, they would have lost. If they scored one less differential point anywhere, they would have lost, and they would not have won the event. So that's crazy. That 75 point game there. Also 288s. It's 86 is the cutoff point to win the round, and they beat that by two rounds in a row. So apparently these guys had a hard fought fucking battle to get to the top here. But it seems like had a very similar sort of system. So let's talk about what they were playing. Missed. Can you repeat? Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let me start at the beginning again. So I think this is a little bit of a kind of a similar deal. I do think that, interestingly, Chaos Daemons are not bad into Imperial Knights, is my experience. I don't know if other people have had the same experience. It might be all me. But the fact that Chaos Daemons have like good single target damage, they can just ram a big demon into something and like make it go away. That usually helps quite a bit. They're also like they run circles around Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights are like on the table and they're moving, like outside of their Mysterious Guardian, who's going to teleport around. Everything is on the table. You know where it is. They're also hot trash at screening. They cannot screen for the life of them unless they bring a ton of Imperial agents, in which case their like actual skew is less effective. And demons are also not bad at killing little stuff. Like they have every demon randomly has a flamethrower on it, essentially. So you can clear out infantry without really exposing yourself pretty well. But I think that the inclusion of demons like both has an army that can score really well. So demons, generally speaking, especially these demonic incursion builds, they have up downs and they have 6-inch deep strike. So you have things like plague bearers, screamers that are all over the table and can constantly score you points. So worst case scenario, this army is going to score you probably a 12-8 or an 8-12. They're going to get you 8 points out of a loss almost regardless. If you can get into a good situation where you can actually sort of like peel apart a big scary knight list, you have things like the Soul Grinders who have D6 plus 2 damage melee weapons that can get rerolls from Bellicor. You have Scarbrand who will just one tap and super heavy, like almost no questions asked, right? You can give him, it doesn't really, unless it has invulnerable saves built in, he's almost certain to kill super heavy unless he rolls a bunch of 2s to wound, which would be unfortunate, but either way. The Great Unclean One's actually really interesting because he can out attrition a lot of super heavies. He, unlike almost any other unit in the game, can absorb a charge from a super heavy knight and just live. And it's not even like he just lives. He actually doesn't even take that much damage. The Grid and Clean One is so specifically designed to absorb damage from Imperial Knight super heavies. It's crazy. He's there. Most of them wound him on 3s because his toughness is astronomically high. So the chances that they drop 1 or 2 attacks between the hit and the wound roll is pretty high. He's only on invulnerable saves, which means the fact that they're hitting him with like AP3, AP4 melee weapons is not that bad. So he's probably blanking 2 to 3 hits on the invuln save. And then he blanks 50% of incoming damage thanks to Endless Gift. So this dude, if you consider Canis Rex, let's talk about Canis Rex, for example, right? Canis Rex has, I'm going to fact check myself here. I believe he's 5 attacks with Freedom's Hand, right? Or is it 6? With sustained hits and a critical 5s. It is indeed 5 attacks. So he, on average, will hit all of them. He's basically rolling like 6 attacks because he's got a reroll baked in there, right? On average, he'll hit all of them and sustained like 2 times, right? So he'll get 7 hits. However, he wounds on 3s with a reroll. So he probably only wounds you 4, maybe 5 times. Let's assume he wounds you 5 times, but you've banked a reroll to a save, right? Then you roll 5 saves and you reroll a failure, which means he's probably only getting 2 through. That's 18 damage, which sounds like a lot, but Endless Gift blanks 9 of it. So of that, Canis Rex, like the highest single damage output model in the game, just about, does less than half of the damage to this Great Unclean One. Just insane. That's crazy. So the Great Unclean One can basically just like hyper tank a Knight's Army for years, unless they come in and they shoot him with everything and then they charge him with a big thing, which obviously you can sort of like play around because of Be'lakor. They can't kill him efficiently. They have to dedicate something really dumb and big to him, and then you just get to counterattack it with the Soul Grinders, with the Scarbrand, all that stuff. The Lord of Change is also really good there because he can like he's strength 12 on his gun, so he wins things on 3s. If you toughness debuff with the Great Unclean One, he wins a Knight entirely on 3s. Which actually means he pumps like 12 damage into a Knight on average. So he's kind of like another like big anti-tank thing, but he works over a longer period of time. So that's a good example of an army that's like both good in a defending position because they're almost always going to score really well, but they can also act as a little bit of an answer to these like big Knight skews. I think that I would be shocked if Black Templars wasn't sort of along the similar lines. This is a Righteous Crusaders list. Ooh, this is cool. Yeah, so it's a bunch of utility and some aggressive stuff. So it's a 20-man Primaris Crusader squad, probably with Grimaldus. These guys, again, I think we talked about the math on this unit or previously, but I believe that they just kill a Knight basically by themselves. If you super like hyper combo them out and you get like sustained lethal critical 5s, I think they super kill it. Grimaldus makes him I don't think he helps them too much in that fight, but the fact that you're just sending so many attacks, probably with lethal hits, probably with rerolls, means that they'll basically chunk through big stuff like regardless, essentially. The high like model count stuff is also good into skew lists like that because they don't tend to have a ton of attacks unless you're talking about Chaos Knights with their like despoiler stuff. But then we're sort of using that to body block for repulsor executioners and gladiators. You can give these guys a 6+ feel no pain with the 6+ feel no pain one. It's not an uphold, right? It's what's the name of the oath of the Templar vow? I'm so bad at this. Oh, it is uphold the honor of the Emperor. Damn it! I thought that one was sustained, but sustained is accept any challenge. All right. Well, I should have just gone with my gut. So they're relatively tanky, and then they can pop out and like counterattack and do a bunch of stuff. So you have a set of very aggressive units, right? We have Incursors, we have Vanguard Veterans, which are good utility, good disruption. And then 2 super hardcore hammer blow like melee units. So you can answer those big super heavies if you want to, but on the flip side, you're also just playing kind of a regular list, right? We have double Repulsor Executioners, Repulsor, Gladiator Lancer, a bunch of armor, a bunch of shooting, a bunch of utility, and then some melee stuff. So you can score fairly highly in most situations, especially since the Primaris Crusaders are unlikely to be like one shot by shooting in most situations. So you can, especially if you're trying to set them up defensively, it's very difficult if you're like cutting lines of sight and not presenting the whole unit to your opponent. It's difficult to actually kill this entire squad, especially with a devout push on the line too. Because like you could potentially be shot off an objective and then devout push back onto it, for example. It's hard to get this unit to a point where it's not going to hold down an objective for at least a battle round. So we're strong in scoring, but we also have this good like answer to individual SKUs. And I think that this is like the answer to the metagame, where you focus on these armies that play like 2 roles rather than just trying to give everyone on the team one goal. Just like be a big tanky boy, or just answer big tanky boys. Making everyone more well-rounded seems to be the way of the future here. Fascinating that Slaanesh isn't included in demons. Like Slaanesh meaning Legion of Excess, or Slaanesh meaning just like Slaanesh in general? Because this list was playing Slaanesh Soul Grinders. The Slaanesh Soul Grinders get a devastating wound range weapon, which is why they get played. But you could just as easily play the Tzeentch one, I think, as well. Honestly, all the Soul Grinders are pretty good. You want them generally because having ranged units with demonic incursion is really powerful. One thing that Bellicor does is like he can pick up multiple demons and then drop them in weird positions outside of your opponent's like possible threat range, right? Because if you're shooting from 24 inches, but you put a screamer unit at 24 or at 19 of you, essentially, so that enemies can't end their movement within 18, you just get to shoot them for free. So if you can use your utility to body block enemy movement and where they can end their movement, then the Soul Grinders and the Lord of Change can just unload onto something, probably kill it, and then the next thing in the line isn't in range to attack them back. So they just have to stand there and like eat it, which is kind of the goal, right? This list skirmishes really well, and then once you come in, you have to hit the grid and clean one first. You do nothing, and then Scarbrand kills you. It's a classic demonic adventuring party. You love to see it. This is my favorite archetype. How are people playing Soul Grinders that you're required to use 160 mil base? Well, demons don't care so much because 90% of the time you just teleport them, so it's not that big of a deal. The Defiler definitely hit the worst of that, but I've played Soul Grinders on 160 mils even before that the document came out that required them to, because it's, again, we had a whole discussion about this earlier, but like the rules were always really kind of cloudy on whether or not you could use it. The only rule that says you didn't have to have a base was on the instruction sheet, which is not an actual rule. Instruction guide rules are not real rules. But like the implication was you didn't have to, but obviously that has changed. But I played them for a while just on the 160 mil, and in demonic incursion specifically, it's fine. You don't even notice it that much because you're just bouncing them around the table. And Bellicor making you unshootable means that like you don't necessarily need to like make sure that you're up behind a wall all the time. Like you can just be out in the open and hang out. And especially if your opponent can only engage you with 1 or 2 things within 18 inches, you're unlikely to lose them. One thing, and my heart goes out to the Port Defiler because they definitely don't have this same benefit. But one thing that people forget about Soul Grinders is that they're really stupid hard to kill. Let's pull up the Soul Grinder thing the Soul Grinder datasheet real quick. Defilers are the same, but their invulnerable save is less and they can't deep strike. So like, I don't know. It's just not very good. I wish they had done something different than what they did with those things, which was just make them a big vehicle with like a huge downside. I wish that they had made their datasheets a little bit more impressive, but that's okay. The Soul Grinder datasheet is fairly impressive. So they're T11, 14 wounds with a 4+ invulnerable save. So this profile, if you're like, for example, right, you're trading shots with like a Gladiator or even like a Predator Annihilator, the chances that you get one tapped are basically 0. And if your opponent has to go within 18 inches to shoot you because of Bellicor, then you're just going to charge them on the subsequent turn. Like it doesn't even matter that much. So as long as you can play the threat range game to where your opponent can't get multiple things in line of sight, it doesn't matter if you just deploy in the open because they can't kill you, or at least like the chances you die are astronomically low. And in doing so, they just present themselves to your army and you get to kill them for free. Plus, so like in Legiones Demonica, they'll just start healing. If you like kill most of them but don't kill them, they're just going to start healing those wounds back. It's actually just lost value. I've seen many a game end because somebody undercommitted into a Soul Grinder, and then they were like, "Oh shit, none of my profiles are particularly effective against this like weird idiot," and suddenly I just got counterattacked by a bunch of demons and died. The Soul Grinder datasheet's actually wild. It's messed up as Deadly Demise. I mean, it's a tank. It's like a big tank. It's not like literally everything has Deadly Demise. It's actually a vehicle. It's the only vehicle in the whole faction. For the longest time, I actually forgot they had vehicle. Because it's like so weird that they do, but yeah. If he explodes, like, of course he's gonna blow up. Now what's interesting about this winning team here is that they also had some other interesting inclusions. Adeptus Custodes with Lions of the Emperor is an interesting one. I actually don't know how this matchup goes into a lot of these like skew builds. I know the Caladius Grav Tanks feel pretty well statted, but they feel like kind of a one-hit wonder because your opponent's just going to like commit everything to kill them on the crackback. But maybe that's fine because you get Custodian Wardens to commit at that point, so be okay. I don't know. I'm not sure, but in you know, in any case, it's not like Adeptus Custodes are not good and don't have good matchups into a lot of other stuff. They also probably have some weird idiosyncrasies with like Thousand Suns, for example, because we have like Anathema Psychotic Rhinos that are just immune to most of their shooting, which can just like sort of wander up the table and give you a huge scoring advantage while basically tanking the world. So that could be a little bit of the thought process there. Best in faction Custodians and 8-man ATC with Solar Spearhead. Yeah, the best in faction is always weird for those. I always get a little bit funny when talking about individual results from a team event because like the pairing process is such a huge part of like whether or not you get consistent wins. You know, like on the winning teams, most of the people who are at the top are like some of the best players in the game, and they still put up losses in team formats because they're taking like bad matchups for their team, right? And especially because you'll see more skewy lists and more skewed matchups than you typically will in a singles event. So like getting hit into bad matchups is like much more reliable or much more relevant. Admana Mortis guy will rip a knight in half. So the Admana Mortis. What about a Lars Captain data sheet? He does a lot of damage. How much damage does he do? Let's pull up a data sheet. So here's like regular Shield Captain. Regular Shield, obviously, Alaris Terminator Shield Captain is probably going to get rerolls. Either way, you're going to get rerolls somehow. It's 6 attacks, and Admana Mortis is plus 2/1, right? It is plus 3/1/1. Excuse me. So it's strength 12, AP 3 damage, and you call for sustains on the rip, I guess. If you're in Lines of the Emperor, you probably convert 100% of your attacks thanks to sustained hits, and then you're and +1 to hit if you're outside of range of other people, and then you're winning on 2 is rerolling. So you should convert 100% basically of your attacks all the way through. So it's 6 at 9/4, or at AP2 damage 4. They're saving on 5, so you should get 4 through, which is 16 damage. So I guess half is pretty reliable, right? And then if they have a Feel No Pain, they're probably taking between 12 and between 13 and 14 damage. So almost literally half of a knight. The rest of the Alaris Terminator unit should kill them though. So like if you get an Alaris Captain with a unit into a knight, I imagine they just die. Which is that's pretty good. I don't know. Seems okay. Yeah, and then you get like another 15 or so spear guys with rerolls, which is probably enough to knock them down. Plus, like you've also probably shot them with full rerolls too. If you're an Alaris Captain unit or an Alaris Terminator unit, which will plink, right? It's not a ton of damage, but it will probably it'll chip them for a bit. Yeah. That's pretty good. The only awkward part is like you can't engage with everything all at once because you will probably get caught by interrupts or fight on death. And then if you're trading, it's gonna feel bad, I think, because their shooting is gonna be really brutal into you. Although if you like absorb it on the wardens or you use it to preserve the Caladius grav tanks, like grav tank, if you're just presented with a bunch of knights, like 2 grav tanks would probably knock one. Pretty close to it, I imagine. And then I guess like if you can kill something on the crack, force them to interrupt, even if they eat a unit, you probably have done enough damage that you're able to do it again next turn. The fights first Rampage is a nightmare. Yeah, that's why. I mean, that's why you just got to shoot it right. You just need the Caladius grav tanks to go into it. If they can commit it really late, though, it's really awkward. If they're just like, I've already my melted despoilers already killed them. The Caladius grav tanks. So enjoy this guy. And you're like, this feels bad. Has 10th edition ever had an infantry meta? That's a great question. I feel like the answer is not really. There have been factions that have had infantry. So like individual archetypes or individual lists have been really good. So for example, the beginning of the edition, it was basically the only 2 factions you could play or you were allowed to play were Eldar and Genestealer cults. And Genestealer cults was literally it was 3 Achilles Ridge runners, and then everything else was in infantry. It's basically identical to the Host of Ascension list that you see right now. Like nothing's changed. Because the like they were just like hyper torqued, and they still like were 50-50 into Eldar. And they actually lost to Space Marines randomly, but Space Marines just died to Eldar. They had like no way to win that matchup. But they were really good. They were super duper duper good. If Eldar were winning like 60% of events, like Genestealer cults were winning like another 25 basically, and then everyone else got the dregs. And then we had Green Tide when it came out was pretty strong. People didn't have a good response to that list, so that was also good. But one thing that tends to happen and this is kind of like a weird, I don't know why they do this, but Games Workshop tends to nerf infantry heavy armies like pretty heavily if they end up becoming strong. Which I don't really know why. Oh, there was also for a while like Righteous Crusaders with like 120 Crusaders is good too for a hot minute. But again, they got nerfed almost instantaneously. They won like War Masters last year, I think. The WTC War Masters, and then we got like nerfed into the ground. They added like 200 points to that list. It was insane for the one event that they'd won. But that event was like kind of low key. I think a lot of people missed how good that was. Sounds like people want to take a look at prenup for Bully Boys. Yeah, Bully Boys is like heavy infantry though. I think there's a difference between like heavy infantry, which is like a custodian army, versus like infantry heavy, which is like a horde. And I will say, I think that Astra Militarum infantry is really good, and no one wants to play it because nobody's interested in like that style of game. But that list, if you're not prepared for it, will just run you over, and you have no chance. It doesn't even do any damage. It kills like 2 models, but it's so fast and has such high OC that it doesn't matter. All right, we want to look at Battle at the Bridge. It was a 5-man team event. So there's a big difference between 5 and 10-man team and 8-man teams, which I talked about a little bit earlier. But the big difference is that the 5-player team events has much less of an opportunity to like massage pairings. So you have to be a little bit more well-rounded in 5-man teams than you do in 8s. The other thing too is that each individual result is much more impactful. Like in 8-man teams, you can drop a couple O20s and you can still come back later on in the round to win the round. But if you drop 2 O20s in 5-man teams, because you're down 3 players, the impact of each of those 20s is so much bigger that you've probably lost already. So making sure that all of your lists can score at least a baseline of points is way more important for 5-man teams. So you tend to see people skew into like the weird like triple grid unclean one lists a lot less. But this was playing, it was Eldar, Aspect Host, Dark Reapers, Dire Avengers, Fire Dragons, a million Fire Dragons, a million Howling Banshees, a million Shining Spears, Striking Scorpions, Warp Spiders. It's a very good defender list. If you don't have like strong indirect fire, it's just gonna like run all around you. It's just gonna totally overwhelm you with a million guys. So this at WCC is gonna be French World Leaders running 80 core berserkers. I saw that, yeah. That's so wild. I wonder if that is like a Knights thing, right? Because they go to strength 6 in the charge with Berserker Warband, and they can like awkwardly. Knights are like okay at killing them, but not great. Especially if you -1 damage their sweep attacks, so they have 1 damage sweep attacks. So you could just like wander into melee with people. With the reactive moves. It could be good. Also, there's like a bunch of armies that probably don't know how to play against that. We're playing Dread Talons? Okay. What the fuck? Is this a Noise Marine list? It is a Noise Marine list. Let's go! Let's go! So, the interesting thing with this is that Dread Talons forces enemies on or battle shocks on enemies within 12 inches. Then each time you take a battle shock attack within 12 inches, you're also at -1. The Noise Marines apply a second instance of -1 if they are if they shoot you. I believe it is what's the timing on it? I think it lasts until your next turn. So basically every single battle shock payoff that you have, until the start of your next shooting phase, each time an enemy hit by a Noise Marine unit takes battle shock checks is -1. So you can impart a like passive -2 to enemy units on battle shock. And then the Eater of Dread Dark Commune gives you command points based on how many battle shock people there are on the battlefield. And then you have a bunch of battle shock payoffs like for your stratagems. So you can get full hit and wound rerolls targeting battle shocked enemies from Pitiless Hunters. You can get +1 AP against battle shocked enemies from Depthless Cruelty. And you can you have a bunch of ways to force battle shocks. So if you can trigger the battle shock payoffs, it's really good. Problem was it was like -1 to battle shocks. It's like a 50-50 chance any of your abilities work. Once you get to -2, it becomes much more reliable. And you have the ability to force multiple of them, which is really cool. So it's a Chaos Lord with Warp Field Thrusters, which is up-down. And then Dark Commune with CP generation. Terminator Sorcerer for +1 AP. Bashor the Arcaphane, because he's sick. Cultists, Rhino, Cultists, a Curse Cultist, I should say. Chaos Biker unit, a Land Raider, what? With a Chaos Terminator squad, probably carrying that guy to the battlefield. I guess like maybe with the Terminator Lord or Sorcerer. I guess. Interesting. Triple Raptors and then Noise Marines, Plague Marines. So I wonder how they ruled. I think the Plague Marines have the Icon of Despair, so if you're within 6 inches of them, you're -1 leadership, right? So you can force -3 to battle shock. It's -2 to the roll and -1 to the characteristic. So the chances your opponents make it is really, really low. Is make the tests, which is why the Plague Marines are in there. And then you can turn on like full rerolls for the Noise Marines and stuff. Which is neat. That's neat. Is it good? I don't know, but it is neat. seems like a lot of work to get wound rerolls because we could just be playing Renegade Raiders, but I don't know. That's a very cool list. Raptors force -1 at the start of the fight phase. Oh, that's cool. The weird part is like it's a ton of battle shock, but the payoffs are kind of limited, right? Because the payoffs are all your stratagems. If like enemies took damage whenever like they got battle shock or something, just be insane. But it's like you battle shock the opponent to allow you to use the detachment at its effectiveness, rather than the detachment doing anything when you get battle shocked. You can't score if you're battle shocked. I mean, yes and no, right? Because you have to be below starting strength to be taking the battle shock tests from the detachment anyway. So you have to be dealing damage to the enemy. You can't just like prevent them from scoring by themselves. And which means for the most part that like you're already in a position where you could have killed them if you were playing like higher damage output stuff. And also most of your battle shock checks outside of the detachment ability ones where you take it if you're below starting strength, most of the battle shock checks being forced by the army do so in your own turn, which means your opponent will just immediately unbattle shock. That's the problem with battle shock mechanics in general, right? Is that the timing, very few of them have a timing that is relevant, like makes them relevant for scoring. Because if, for example, like I have an effect where it's like I do something to you and then you take a battle shock tech. Like for example, in this detachment, you can 6-inch deep strike enemies and force enemies to take a battle shock check. Like, okay, cool. So I do that. Then you're battle shocked and I take your objective. Turn flips over, you become unbattle shocked, you take it back. And I've accomplished nothing, right? Unless I'm also like killing you with that. In which case, I might as well just play a detachment that makes me good at killing you to begin with. Which is why always the problem with this. And I know I heard a lot of people talking about this particular list as the Noise Marine change came out, and I was like, oh shit, we have another -1 battle shock thing. But like, it's still the problems with battle shock tests are still there. It's just way better at applying the battle shock tests than any version of this list was previously. Which I do think is legitimately good. And if you get like like big hammer units in with full hit and wound rerolls against battle shocked enemies, like that is a ton of damage because you also turn off all their defensive technology and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna say that it's like bad for sure, but it is like kind of a unique quirk of this archetype. Wish Battleshock interacted with faction mechanics more. Battleshock Sutari can't give up some doctrines. Necrons can't reanimate turn its own benefit synapse. Yeah, it would be interesting if it was a less random effect, but it instead of like it had more rules implications, I think would be interesting. One thing, I have a friend who keeps saying that what they should have done is written like actually given Battleshock no rules effect whatsoever. Just it's a status effect that based on your faction applies different effects. So like either like Master Militarum can't receive orders. Cool. Like Tyranids no longer get synapse or whatever. But maybe you could be like Space Marines, no negative effects. They should know no fear, right? And you're like, okay, but I'll still get Battleshock payoffs. So if I have an effect that says you're battle shocked, it will still work. And so then if I have like a guy who's rerolls against battle shocked enemies, I still get it. But like there's you can change the what happens based on the faction. I thought that was a cool idea. It would require a lot of work, but it was very cool. You could also have things that like get benefits when you battle shock them or whatever, which would be like interesting. That they tried to do that with Dark Angels, but they fucked it up really bad. They made the detriments really bad, but the bonus is like not very good. So you're just like battle shock yourself and can't use Armor of Contempt anymore and get like +1 OC. Nice. Cool. Thanks, man. What else are we playing in this? I'd love to see that we have them doing pretty well though, which is cool. That's it's also just like it's a spicy list in general, just because it has up, down, and 6-inch deep striking Raptor units. I think at baseline that means you're going to score fairly well. And then on top of that, if you can battle shock enemies to get battle shock payoffs and get a bunch of damage out of your front line, it's actually like well rounded, right? I think the battle shock combo is like the least interesting part of that detachment, maybe. Even though there's like so much emphasis being put towards making it work. It's like largely just a regular army that has an above average level of maneuverability, which is like generally just very useful. So for that reason, it's actually probably pretty cool. Tyler Ambolt here with Bully Boys. Let's go. They're back. Is it all right? Here's the question, chat. I want to take bets. Is it Break a Boys, Bully Boys? Is it Break a Bully Boys this time around? No, egg on my face. Sorry, don't bet. You would have lost. It's boys. It's regular boys, Bully Boys. It's literal Bully Boys. So it's double Beast Boss, one with Ed Stompa. They are War Boss keyworded, so they turn on all your Bully Boy synergies. Gaskell, Thraka, triple regular War Boss. Double Beast Snagas for the dude guys to go into. 2 units of 20 regular boys, plus a truck for some knobs. Double Gretchen for backline stuff. Double Kill Rigs to carry the Beast Snaga boys around in. You can also, the interesting thing there is that you can stack +1 strength a couple times. So the Kill Rigs can point up to +2 strength onto a Beast Snaga boys unit who's strength 5 base. So they go to strength 7. And then you have 2 wogs available, so you can get 2 rounds of +1 strength on them already. So they can go up to strength 8, which is actually kind of nuts. Or you can do that on things like knobs, right? Where you can get the knobs to strength 12. And then the knobs start wounding big stuff on 3s, like try T11 on 3s. And that gets really spooky too. 3 mega knobs to turn on Gaskel's a leadership role, leadership ability, Storm Boys for utility, and then a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. So interesting. I guess we're just like we're just big scoring, right? It's like just a bunch of idiots, and we're good at putting OC2 stuff on objectives. We can protect them with a 5+ vulnerable save for 2 rounds because they all have war bosses, and get the +1 strength for 2 rounds, and get the advanced charge for 2 rounds. So it's like very aggressive and sort of obnoxious to interact with. I actually like this. I was shocked, to be honest, and I'm not an orc player, so like I don't know the full ins and outs of all of the detachment selection methodology. But I was shocked that after the Mega Knobs nerf, Bully Boys basically died entirely. Like everyone was like, "Oh, we can't take 18 Mega Knobs and like just like grind our face on the keyboard. I don't want to play anymore." I was like, "You get 2 walks. What are you talking about?" This detachment ability is insane. But everyone just didn't want to play him, so that was interesting to me. I guess like you lose like the 5-up criticals, I guess, and the -1 to wound. The -1 to wound from War Tribe is like really big deal. But man, double wogs though, and fight on death, really good. A reroll strat for knobs units. The big thing too is that I think outside of getting the 5-up critical hits, which is a big deal for like low volume, high impact attacks, Bully Boys is probably the single. Well, maybe not the single. Like this army wide sustained hits is a big deal for War Tribe, but when you're talking about Break a Boys, they get such a big benefit from the +1 attack from Wog that having 2 rounds of Wog is like huge for them because their attack volume is so low. Wog is literally a 50% damage increase for them. And it's fascinating to me that combo hasn't really been explored. But I guess they're not like actual knobs, so they don't get all of the detachment abilities. They just like they need a war boss in their team. They're not knob keyworded, right? I'm not crazy. Get their data sheet out. No, they're not. They're just infantry. They're just infantry boys, but like 2 base attacks. Once you get +1 attack, it's wild. And the number of times I see opponents being like just playing KG from the Break a Boys against War Tribe until the Wog is inactive, and then they actually just kind of like fall off quite a bit is a lot. So this unit doesn't feel very good in War Tribe for that reason, but in Bully Boys it feels really strong. Heard the Orks went undefeated because they didn't get paired against Necrons. I feel like there's a story there I'm missing. I like this list though. This list is cool. I mean, having a trillion OC is definitely worth it. We're also playing Tyranids, some Trinity Assaults. Tyranids feel so. I watched the Tyranid versus Knights matchup so many times over the weekend, and they got fucking dumpstered every time. That might be one of the worst matchups among like two like very competitive army archetypes right now in the entire game, and it made me so sad. Like the Tyranids got like this sick detachment that's like borderline broken, and people were like, I never want to play against Tyranids again. Their subterranean assault is too strong, and then immediately got enormously hard countered, instantly hard countered into the like pits of the earth. At least you can dodge that matchup in team formats, but the teams I saw accidentally like that ran into it were just like, oh no, I die. It was very bad. I even saw some Tyranid players like feeling confident about the matchup until they played it. It must have been all theory crafting beforehand. But I definitely saw some Tyranid players who were like, I think I got this. Like, I think I have enough damage output to get through it. And I was like, you don't, man. You just straight up don't, my dude. It's not gonna happen for you. You're gonna kill one knight on your go turn, and then they're gonna table you. Oh. There's one snake list at WTC. Dude, it's wild that they can release this detachment, but the game is so broken right now that this detachment isn't even that good. Literally, your entire army has infinite movement and reroll ones to hit, and it doesn't even save the Tyranid faction, bro. Just dodge knights. Just dodge knights and they're good. They're good against everything else, I swear. I swear they're good against everything else. Knights and dedicated transports. Don't hit dedicated transports with them. That feels bad. Oh, we looked at all these lists. Pretty sick team, honestly. Congratulations on the 5-0, by the way. Kind of killed it over there. 5-0, and the next one was 3-1-1. So that's actually pretty strong domination. Detachment seems so much fun. Yeah, for sure. It is super fun. Can confirm. It's just the unfortunate math of the situation. Mordecai got insta nerfed while Knight's just vibing. Yeah, that's how it feels a little bit. Knights and Death Guard just like absolutely dumpstering people, and they're like, it's fine. It's an interesting situation because it doesn't even feel like it would take very much to fix things, right? Like, I don't think that anything is like, there's no mechanics that are too strong, right? They hit all of the like the raw mechanics that I think were problematic, like the Warp Meld pack stuff, which wasn't even that good, right? Like, it won like one tournament. A good thing they hit Khorne Demonkin, which had problematic mechanics but no wins. They can solve everything by just upping the points on some units, and I think the game is like in a really, really good spot. And they just won't do it. We gotta wait another 2 months, or month and a half, I guess, at this point. Bring other armies up to that power level. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too. Is like, and in December when they did the December, like the huge December rebalance, where they were like, guys, new detachments, new rules, like Space Marines got basically fully reworked. You got the inkling that they were like, okay, we recognize release 10th edition was not good. This design ethos where nobody does any damage anymore is not okay, and we're gonna pull back on that. And that's what they did, right? Is like they took that ethos where everything, like every combat has to last 3 fight phases because no one does any damage to anyone else, and they were like, this is not fun. And also, anytime anyone does do damage, they're immediately the most broken thing ever. So you have to heartburn nerf everything, and it sucks. And they were like, all right, we want 40k to actually be lethal again. And it feels like between that, the Knights like toughness rebalance, right? Death Guard, just being Death Guard. They're doing a lot to walk that back. which I think is interesting. I think that and so it feels very much like we're going to be like, 6 months from now, we're going to be re-entering a period where it's going to feel a little bit more like 8th or 9th edition, where like you're just laser beaming each other off the battlefield, which in my opinion, more fun. I like it when I shoot my opponent in their models guy. I don't like it when they just live forever and have too many wounds. What are the restrictions on teams using allies like Quest or Forge packs with both AdMech and agents? So allies that pull data sheets from, essentially how it works, here's the nutshell, is that each faction keyword on a data sheet can only be used once over the course of over a whole team. So if you have an ally mechanic that pulls a data sheet directly from another faction and says you can include Harlequin keywords data sheets in your army, so you go to the Harlequin section of the Eldar Codex and you pull Harlequin data sheets over, that means you can no longer use any other Harlequins. In fact, I think that cuts it. Actually, don't know if that cuts Eldari off, because Harlequins are, I believe, that their own thing, right? Or they're Eldari. What's a troop? What's a Harlequin troop say? It's faction keyword Harlequins. So actually, like, Harlequins prevent other people from running Harlequins, but I don't think they prevent other people from running Eldari. I'm not sure about that one. I think that depends on the exact format. Because some of them say I think you can only use codexes once, and some of them say you can only use faction keywords once. I'm not sure. But in any case, let's say you have Imperial agents in your army. You pull a data sheet out of Imperial agents, you include it in your army as an ally. That restricts Imperial agents out of every other army in your team. No one else can run any Imperial agents units entirely. Same for like Chaos Daemons. If I'm playing in Chaos Space Marines and I pull Nurglings into my Chaos Space Marines army, that means I cannot include Chaos Daemons as a faction, and I cannot include Chaos Daemons in my Chaos Knights army elsewhere on the team, for example. However, important to note, if you have bespoke data sheets, duplicate bespoke data sheets in your codex that have a different faction keyword, does not restrict. So, for example, I can take Scarbrand as an ally in my Chaos Space Marine army if I wanted to, right? And I can take Scarbrand in my Khorne Demonkin army, because that's World Eaters and it uses the Blood Legion faction keyword. As long as I don't share faction keywords, you're good to go. So you can include Great Unclean Ones in your Taliban Summoners and Great Unclean Ones in your Demonic Incursion, for example. You can include Imperial Agent Sisters of Battle in your Imperial Knights list, and you can include Battle Sister Squads in your Adeptus Custodes list, because those have different faction keywords. It checks the faction keyword. So for Questor, if you use Sisters, is it minus AdMech and also Sisters? No. So it would be you'd be using Imperial Knights, Imperial Agents. It doesn't restrict Adeptus Custodes at all. It's essentially an entirely different unit. They don't even know. They look at the Imperial Agent Sister Squad and they're like, "What even are you? I don't recognize you. I've never known this person." Sister's very cliquey. End of Ninth was the most fun. Yeah. We've talked so much on this channel about how good End of Ninth was that I don't know if we need to cover it again. I will almost certainly at this point, I will almost certainly do a couple like documentary style videos. I've had a lot of windshield time over the weekend. I was mulling it over, and I think it would be cool to do a documentary style video where we go through the entire timeline of 9th edition. I think also to do this for 8th edition would be cool too. And maybe even start with 8th edition, because 9th edition was definitely a continuation of 8th edition. One of the reasons that 9th was so good was that it was 8th edition Redux. They didn't change that much between the two. They just added like wildly superior mechanics. They were like, oh, we don't have missions. It uses ITC missions because we didn't know how to build missions in 8th edition. Mission pack that we're going to update periodically to make more balanced. Cool. Oh, True Line of Sight's fucking trash because everyone's dying on turn 1. Terrain rules with obscuring terrain. Sick. It was, but like the core mechanics.
Sioza donated $2 through Super Chat.
Heyo.
Reply. Thanks.
Sreyosa, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that, bud. We had 9th Nizranth and 9th Nostalgia. Yeah, I know. It's true. I feel like it's part of the brand at this point. We can't not do that. Oh, man. Ryan G. Again.
Ryan
Thank you, sir.
G donated $5 through Super Chat. Could we look at the new NID Combat Patrol? It's certainly an amount of models.
Absolutely, we can look at new combat patrols. That will be a good capstone to the army. I opened up Warhammer Community to a picture of Scarbrand, and I was like, "Fuck, what? Let's go!" It's Age of Sigmar Scarbrand. How dare you? How dare you be like this, Scarbrand? You've betrayed me. All right, let's talk about new combat patrols. So, is this a combat patrol? This looks so many models. It's 10 Blood Claws, 5 Wolfguard Terminators, which, in my opinion, I think Wolfguard Terminators. I wish that these power swords were strength 6. If like the baseline like relic power sword profile was strength 6, Space Marines would be like an entirely different faction. It's like crazy. Suddenly all their melee would win T11 on 5s, which would be huge. But you get Wolfen, highly playable. Blood Claws. There's a Ragnar build that plays them. Maybe okay. I think Wolfguard Terminators are like the weak link here. Also Battle Leader is fucking awesome. This guy's rules. I like that the implication is he's joining the Wolfguard Terminators, which is definitely not happening. But I think these guys are like a points cut away from actually like unironically being good. If you get to a point where the Wolfguard Terminator defensive profile is spammable, I think they're actually kind of sick. If they were like, I don't want to say a number that's like too low because it's such a weird cutoff. It's like playing one of those games where the like bar goes back and forth and you have to hit it in the green zone so that it like gets you the maximum points, because there's definitely a spectrum of points that Wolfguard Terminators are good at. Right now, they're at, I want to say like 165. Is that right? But I think there's a points value where they're actually goated. I saw some people, because I made a short about Terminators and I said Wolfguard Terminators were good, and people were like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was the data sheet. The data sheet is well assembled. The problem is, I think the points value, because you have to basically expect that they're going to do. They're 170, so they're 30, 4 points per model. What's like an equivalent? I think if you put them to like, I don't know what the number is. It's like 150, almost like one. It's like 145. Too much to ask. Is sub 30 for a Terminator profile too low? No, then they're just better Blade Guard veterans. Like 155 maybe, or something like that. But like you can be at 4 wounds with a 2 up, 4 up, -1 to be wounded. That's such a profile with a good melee profile, right? That's very good. And if all they do is like hold down objectives, it's actually sick. They're like a bad Deathwing Knight, but at 50% the cost. And honestly, the comparison to Blade Guard veterans isn't even that good, because they're way tankier, but or I guess they're not slower because they're Wolfguard. They're faster. They're faster than normal Space Marines. So I guess axe that. But they can't go in transports, and there's only 5 of them. Like maybe like 29 points is like good enough. Can you get them at 150, 145? I think this unit would actually be sick. They'd be really good. When you compare them to like regular like assault Terminators or range Terminators, they actually do a thing. They've been assembled to do something concrete, which is like be good in melee and tank pretty hard. Versus like, I don't know, I have a Power Fist and a gun, and the gun's bad, and the Power Fist doesn't have any attacks. Cool. I'm bad on every level. Hearthguard are 150 if you want a comparison. And Hearthguard have the same ability, right? Their defensive stats are terrible, which is awkward, right? No invuln save and 2 wounds instead of 4. But they have really good shooting. Like melee. Maybe that's the comparison. I don't know. Storm Shield making them 4 wins is backflip. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Storm Shield's when you don't feel like you're paying for it with like abilities and stuff feels so good. Like that's half of the reason that Deathwatch Terminator squads are good. Is because like you can put 3 special weapons on them and 2 Storm Shields. So the special weapons have just enormous amounts of like there's boatloads of wounds to tank behind. So those units are like good at shooting and get to hold down objectives. These guys would be okay, like better in melee, I think, on the whole, but no shooting. So make them cheaper, you know? What's a Deathwatch Terminator squad? Like 185? $190. So these guys are 20 points less for basically the same unit, but they don't have any guns. So like you cut them to like 165 or 155 or something like that. I think they'd actually be sick. I think they would surprise people. I think people would be like, "This is a really annoying unit to deal with. Why are they so cheap?" And I think that would be the point where they're good. I wouldn't say like I think they would be spammable, but I think you would get to the point where you would see unit lists with one of them, and it would be really annoying, or maybe 2. So I don't know. This Combat Patrol feels totally fine. I think currently the Wolfguard Terminators aren't particularly playable, but everything else is. This is a slam dunk. All of these units are good. Primaris Crusaders, phenomenal. Emperor's Champion, phenomenal. Primaris, Sword Brethren, like best unit in the index. Although, who knows what the Codex is going to look like. The sad part to me about this is that when they released this, I was like, oh, that means that we won't get a bunch of new Black Templar stuff that they're going to cram into a Combat Patrol. But on the flip side, they already got like a full range re-release in 9th edition, so I don't know if we need it. Blade Guard Veteran being included is nice too, because there's like always there's for sure going to be some like weird Execrator or Judiciary combo for them. Definitely some weird Chaplain combo in the new Codex. I'm gonna skip this one because I want to talk about the Grey Knights one, which is not good already. Venerable Dreadnought. I always called it a Venerable Contemptor. Fuck me. The Dreadnought sucks. He's so bad. Get him out of here. He doesn't teleport, right? Because like he just doesn't have the army ability. What is the Grey Knights Dreadnought called? Is it a Venerable Dreadnought? Oh, sorry, I had it. I think it is called a Grey Knights Venerable Dreadnought, I think. It is called a Grey Knights Venerable Dreadnought. He does not have the faction ability. He gives infantry reroll hits and wounds of 1 within 6 inches. Infantry that are definitely not going to immediately teleport away. What a dumpster fire. Although maybe the Codex has like maybe sword bearers are back in the Codex and like Grey Knights vehicles are good. Everything else is good though. I mean, it turns out when your entire faction is just 2 kits, when you include those 2 kits into a Combat Patrol, you're feeling pretty good. This guy sucks though. He's bad. He also has the Psyker keyword, but no payoff for it. So it's just downside. Cool. Let's go. What an idiot. This is like so funny. This Combat Patrol is flabbergasted me. What is this doing? I hope that they don't get rid of. I mean, you could just play the Combat Patrol out of Leviathan, right? Which isn't good, but it is something. It gives you like a core of an army. And in fairness, Gene Stealers are perfectly playable, and a Biovore is going to be played in every army. But the rest of this Combat Patrol is worthless. There's fucking Tyrant Guard and a Parasite of Vortex. And somebody pointed out in the Discord too that the Combat Patrol includes a Parasite of Vortex, but doesn't appear to include Rippers. So he has a Ripper payoff, but you don't have the models to use it. This feels very much like one of those instances of like, oh guys, we have extra Tyrant Guard. So how do we offload these pieces of shit? You're like, let's put them in a Combat Patrol. Which is actually wild because they've been direct order only for a really long time, actually. So I'm curious as to whether or not that they are still like only direct orderable. What a not good combat patrol. Could you imagine a new player buying this and being like, okay, how do I use these? So I have this Parasite of Mortrax. He's gonna be a cool melee guy, right? No, he's bad in melee. He forces enemies to take a battle shock check at the start of the fight phase. Okay, cool. So what do I do with him? Like, well, on a high level, in some detachments, he's a good enhancement caddy. And you're like, what do any of those mean? And he's a lone operative. Like, so he holds your backline objective. Oh, cool. I'm glad that the cool character model that I got in my combat patrol is a backline objective holder that I will play in 1/10 of my armies as a character that only holds enhancements and has no combat effect. Sweet. What a good purchase for my new army that I bought. Now I have Tyrant Guard, a unit that is it works counterintuitively, and in some cases makes its attached characters worse. At least can I put the Parasite of Mortrax into it to protect him? No, you can't attach your character. Oh, okay. So what attaches it to them? Nothing in your combat patrol. Sick. Thank you. I appreciate that. So they're a melee unit with bad melee stats that is like kind of retroactively designed to have a Neuro Tyrant included. But we didn't put one in the box, so go fuck yourself. And then 2 units of Gene Stealers. Skewy Patrol. So bad. I don't get it. Oh man. Hilarious. It's not even like in the comparison of power level between this and other combat patrols. Like it's not good, right? But that's not necessarily all the reason you buy a combat patrol. Because sometimes you're just using it to start a collection. But it's also just a really bad way to start a Tyranid army. Like the only thing that you're gonna use like more often than not is the Biobore. And maybe one Gene Stealer unit. And the rest of it you just throw out immediately. Trash. Encouraging players to build Hive Guard is a great idea for new players. I'm actually curious. You go to gamesworkshop.com. Can you buy Tyrant Guard right now? Because for the longest time, I know basically throughout all of 9th edition when I was trying to buy Tyrant Guard, I could not purchase the box. Oh, you can. Okay. Because it was either direct order only or it was out of stock everywhere. But now I guess you can just buy them. But if this was a way to get Tyrant Guard, it would actually be really popular. But I guess you could just purchase them. So that's good. And I mean, it sounds like they're very viable in subterranean assault, so that's good. Are there bits for Hive Guard? I believe so. Yeah, I believe that they just include the contents of the box. I don't think they do the thing where they like only give you half the box anymore. Zoanthropes have never been in a discount box. It's because they're that's good. That's a good. They should never include Zoanthropes in anything. They're just encouraging people not to make poor purchasing decisions. Want an updated Screamer Killer card effects? I want the updated Screamer Killer card. Yeah, I mean that model's pretty cool. It's like really big. Can you buy it separately now? Or is it still Leviathan only? Oh, Horrors of the Hive. It's a combo box with the Neuro Tyrant. That's shitty. Hey, what about this like medium monster that you want to play in triplicate? Oh, you have to package it with a Neuro Tyrant. So you have to get this character you only want one of in every box. Cool. Cool, man. Appreciate that. Thank you. That's lame. A Screamer Killer like this with a bunch of different builds in it would be so sick, though. That would be hype as fuck. If 11th edition Tyranids is like the Screamer Killers, the Codex, I'm back in. We're back in, boys. Give them the old Screamer Killer profile from 9th edition. They moved like 14 inches of a trillion attacks. And I'm just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. They're on the same sprue? Lame. Why'd they do that? Why'd they do that, chat? Anyway, folks, I think that's my live stream for today. Interesting stuff from team tournaments. I'm curious to see what we end up, what ends up doing well as we go through the next like month or so of team events, because it's going to be a lot of big team events going down in the next couple of weeks, and the proof will be in the pudding whether or not it does end up being like kind of like these really skew heavy armies where you're running a million berserkers and hero knights and like multiple super heavy skews versus more reasonable stuff where you're playing regular boys. Anyway, chat, I think I'm going to go ahead and hop off. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me. I will be live tomorrow at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern on Twitch. I have a game scheduled with Sally Mandy's over there. It's awkwardly a Firestorm mirror match, just like randomly. So I'm curious to see how that will go. It's an Ultramarines Firestorm versus a Salamanders Firestorm. I am very curious about how that ends up, how that goes, because I have no idea. I have no earthly idea. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching me. We have some more games scheduled for the remainder of the week as well. T5S2 Invitational information is about to go out as well. I'm going to be sending invites later this evening to the top 16 players, so we'll get a look at what that's going to look like. And I think I'm going to stream that all on this channel as we move on. And then I am going to be at a GT this weekend for IRL streaming. Which GT remains to be seen, but I have 2 on the books, and I will be going to one of them. We had a little bit of drama in the background with one of the events. There was a TO, an event, or there was an event organizer, a tournament organizing group, and the convention itself. It's an event at the convention. So the event that I had scheduled previously had 3 separate management group parties. The event hired an event organizer who then hired a tournament organizing committee or a corporation to run the event, and none of them talked to each other. And so the event ended up being kind of a shit show. They double booked streamers for it. It was a whole thing. It's not that big an event, so it's going to be weird. It's not that I don't want to stream alongside the other streamer who's there. It's that it's going to be kind of tight, I think. But worst case scenario, I'm going to be live streaming that. Otherwise, I'll be live streaming a different event. And then obviously the week after, we've got Heart of War, which is going to be a major level event. And then week after that's going to be Tennessee Elite Open, which is a big team event. And then Lone Star Open. It's the week after that. So lots of streaming going on. Anyway, chat. I don't know what the venue is going to be like. I think it's like a hotel convention center, so it's like medium sized, I guess. Sure glad that your entire army didn't get thrown to the fire up for the Invitational. Yeah, fuck. At least it didn't happen during the Invitational. That would have been worse. What if you qualified for Top Cut and then it occurred upon Top Cut? That would have been brutal. Yeah, it's like mid to small. Yeah, it's 40 players, I think, which is like fine. But we would have literally been live streaming 20% of the event at any one time. At having 2 streamers there, like 20% of the players would have been on stream or a recorded table, which is like kind of crazy. And when you are at that point, like I don't know, there's like a dilution of the quality of games you get. I don't want to be like mean to anybody, but like if you start streaming like the X, like the like, 2-1-1s or whatever, you're like, oh, these games will be fine, but like be a little sloppy, be some sloppy 40k. Whereas like the really good games are when you get to the top ends of like the top cuts of like super majors and stuff, which is where you want to be getting 100% coverage. Yeah. Which is like you remember the OG whenever we'd have like a cheating scandal and people would be like, how come there isn't a camera on every table and recording the stuff so we can find cheaters? Like, brother, do you know what that would entail? What the fuck? You could not do that. There's no way. Impossible, my dude. No more cheating ever. Everything's on camera all the time. I loved those comments. Those always like those cracked me up. Every time somebody was like, it's easy. We just put cameras on every table with microphones so that we can run back the clock and rewind and see what happened in every game. Nobody's doing that, bro. Big brother Trevi's always watching, indeed. Yeah, insane. All right, chat. Well, thanks for hopping in, hanging out, everybody. This was a great one. I'll be live again on Twitch tomorrow. on the GT streaming next week. And then I believe what I'd like to do is next week I'm going to lock in. I actually have a commission artist on standby, and we're going to start doing Wednesday streams as well. This week I just didn't have the opportunity to get it done. But next week we're going to start doing Wednesday streams. We're going to do some silly stuff. I'm excited to do silly things. So that's what we're going to do, chat. Anyway, folks, I'll see you around. Keep it classy. Have happy wargaming. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.